welcome back to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
Today feels a bit like the season finale of a really intense show.
It really does. It's the climax.
We've been working our way through this letter to the Ephesians, this huge theological mountain, and now we're finally here, chapter 6.
And if you've been with us, you know Paul doesn't really do light and fluffy endings. He's not just saying goodbye.
No, he pivots. He goes straight from the household dinner table onto a cosmic battlefield.
Exactly. And the context is just so critical here. We have to imagine we're in first century Ephesus.
Right, a massive cosmopolitan city.
Yeah.
You've got the Temple of Artemis, this culture steeped in magic, and the rigid Roman social structures.
So our mission today is pretty simple. We're going to read through chapter 6, all of it, but we're going to have to hit the pause button a lot.
A lot, because some of this is, let's be honest, really challenging for a modern ear. Slaves, masters, spiritual warfare.
Right. And our research stack is ready. We've got socio-historical studies on Roman households. We have archaeology on Roman armor.
So we can really decode what Paul was doing.
Right.
Because I think it's easy to miss the revolution if you don't know the code.
Absolutely. Let's see how he tries to reshape what he calls the old humanity.
Okay, let's jump in. We're picking up right where chapter 5 left off, in the middle of these household codes. First up, the children. Here are verses 1 through 4 of Ephesians 6.
Okay.
Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. All right, let's unpack this. Children, obey your parents. I mean, it sounds like pretty standard Sunday school stuff. Is there anything radical happening here?
On the surface, no. But in that historical context, it's very strange. And to get why, you have to understand the Roman concept of the paterfamilias.
The father of the family.
Yeah, but that phrase doesn't even begin to cover it. The paterfamilias legally held what was called patria potestas.
Which means?
Absolute power. I mean, legally, the power of life and death. If a baby was born, he could just decide to expose it to the elements.
To just let it die.
Yes. Or if he needed cash, he could sell his own kids into slavery.
That is just, it's terrifying. He's not a parent. He's a monarch with total unchecked authority.
A legal dictator. Now look at the text again. Who's the first person Paul addresses?
The kids. Children, obey.
And that's the radical shift. In all the other ancient household codes, like from Aristotle, you only talk to the man. You tell him how to manage his property.
Which included the children.
Included his wife, his children, his livestock. But Paul speaks directly to the children. He's treating them like moral agents who have dignity. He's assuming they can choose to obey in the Lord.
So just by addressing them, he elevates them from property to people.
Precisely. And then you get verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger.
Which implies that they were doing that.
In that culture, constantly, they could do whatever they wanted. But Paul puts a restriction, a boundary on that absolute power.
He tells them not to exasperate them.
He's fundamentally changing the relationship. He's telling this all-powerful Roman father, you don't own them, you nurture them. It's a shift from ownership to stewardship.
And that's a massive cultural check on power.
Huge.
Which brings us right to the next section, and this is the heavy one. We're moving from children to slaves. This is verses 5 through 9.
Yep.
Bondservants, obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling, with a sincere heart, as you would Christ, not by the way of eye service as people-pleasers, but as bondservants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, rendering service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man, knowing that whatever good anyone does, this he will receive back from the Lord, whether he is a bondservant or is free. Masters, do the same to them and stop your threatening, knowing that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and that there is no partiality with him. Okay, we just have to get this out there. The text tells slaves how to obey. It doesn't call for abolition. And for a lot of us listening today, that is a very hard pill to swallow.
It is. It's incredibly difficult. And we have to be honest about the history. I mean, slavery was the economic engine of the entire Roman Empire.
It was everywhere.
Everywhere. And slaves were legally considered chattel, property, like a talking tool. If this tiny group, the early church, had called for a massive slave revolt,
He would have been crushed, like Spartacus.
exactly, Rome would have just annihilated them with mass crucifixions. So Paul isn't calling for what would have been a political suicide mission.
But he's not just accepting the status quo either.
No, not at all. He's doing something smarter. He's planting a kind of theological virus in the system that, in the long run, destroys the whole logic of slavery.
And I think I see that in how he talks to the slaves. He tells them to serve as slaves of Christ.
Right. He gives them back their agency. A slave had no will of their own. Paul says, no, you do. You can choose to do your work as service to God, not just this man. It gives their work dignity.
It connected to a higher purpose.
But then, the real, I mean, you could call it the atomic bomb in this whole passage is verse 9.
Masters, do the same to them.
Just pause on that. Do the same. What did he just tell the slaves to do? Serve with goodwill, with sincerity, from the heart.
And now he turns to the masters, the guys holding the whips, and says, you do that too.
It's unbelievable. And then he says, stop your threatening.
Which was their main management tool, right? Fear.
It was the only tool. It was the basis of the entire system. Paul literally disarms them, and then he reminds them, you both have the same master in heaven, and there's no partiality with him.
He completely levels the playing field.
He destroys the philosophical foundation of the whole hierarchy. On the street, one is a master, one is a slave. But in the church, they're brothers. And you simply cannot sustain that institution if you believe the person scrubbing your floor is your equal before God.
It just took a tragically long time for that seed to grow.
Far too long, but it's right there in the text.
Wow. Okay, so we've dealt with the household. Now the camera pulls way back. We're leaving the home, and we're stepping onto a battlefield. This is the famous armor of God section, verses 10 through 13. Here we go.
Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm.
What a pivot.
A huge pivot. Cosmic powers, schemes of the devil, spiritual forces. Why this sudden, intense turn to the supernatural?
Because he's writing to Ephesus.
Right.
We have to remember Acts 19. When the gospel first arrives in Ephesus, what's the first thing the new believers do?
They have that massive bonfire with all their magic scrolls, the Ephesians.
A huge bonfire. I mean, the value is something like 50,000 drachmas. That's millions of dollars in today's money.
So this is a culture that was just steeped in magic. Completely. They lived in constant fear of fate, of demons, of the evil eye. They spent a fortune on amulets and spells just for protection.
And when they became Christians, they burned all of that. They threw away their cultural safety net.
Exactly. And now they might be feeling a little spiritually naked, a bit vulnerable.
Makes sense.
So Paul isn't just using some cool sermon metaphor. He's addressing a very real, deep-seated anxiety. He validates their fear. He says, yes, these cosmic powers are real. You're not crazy. But then he says, you don't need those magic amulets anymore. I have something far superior for you. You have the armor of God.
And I notice the command here isn't attack. It's stand firm. He says it over and over.
That's a crucial distinction. The posture is defensive. Think of like the Roman testudo formation, the tortoise, where soldiers lock their shields together.
Okay.
The idea is that the decisive victory has already been won by Christ. The church's job isn't to conquer new ground from the devil. It's to hold the ground that Christ has already won for them.
So it's about not giving an inch, which brings us to the armor itself. And Paul was probably chained to a Roman soldier as he was writing this.
He was probably looking right at it.
I'm going to read through verses 14 to 20, and let's just break it down piece by piece.
Let's do it.
Stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth.
All right, the Baltius. This wasn't just to hold your pants up. In the ancient world, men wore tunics, these long robes.
You can't fight in a robe.
You'd trip, so the belt was what you used to gather up all that fabric, tuck it in, and get ready for action. It's about integrity. If you're hiding things, if you're tripping over your own lies, you can't fight.
And having put on the breastplate of righteousness.
This covers your vital organs, right? Your heart, your lungs. But here's the amazing theological link. In Isaiah 59, the prophet describes God himself putting on a breastplate of righteousness.
So it's not our righteousness.
No, that's the key. Paul is saying you are not protected by your own good deeds. You are wearing God's righteousness. His character is your protection.
That is a huge relief. Okay, next. And as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace.
Roman military sandals, the caligae. They had these thick leather soles studded with hobnails. They were basically ancient cleats.
For traction.
For traction. Ancient battles were chaos. Mud, blood, slick ground. If you slip, you're dead. The gospel of peace is what gives you your footing, your stability, when the world is chaotic.
In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one.
This is such a vivid image. The Roman scutum was a huge rectangular shield, almost the size of a door.
Okay.
And he mentions flaming darts. In a siege, archers would dip arrows in pitch, light them on fire, and shoot them at the enemy.
That's psychological warfare. It's meant to cause panic.
Exactly, because if your wooden shield catches fire, you have to drop it.
Yeah.
But what did the soldiers do? They soaked their leather-covered shields in water before the battle.
So when the arrow hits
So
her.
it just sizzles and goes out.
So faith is the wet leather.
That's it. When those incendiary lies come, the panic, the fear, the accusation that God has abandoned you, faith just extinguishes them on contact.
And take the helmet of salvation.
Simple enough. Protects the head, the mind. It's the assurance that you belong to God, protecting you from that fatal blow of despair.
And the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God.
Finally, our one offensive weapon. But notice, it's the sword of the Spirit.
Okay.
Think back to magical Ephesus. Magic was all about using words of power, spells, to manipulate the spirits to do what you want.
Right.
The sword of the Spirit is the opposite. It's God's revealed truth. You don't manipulate it, you wield it. You rely on it to cut through deception.
And then, after all the equipment, he lists the power source in verse 18.
Right.
Praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints and also for me.
Prayer is the energy grid for the whole suit of armor. You can have the best gear in the world, but if you're not talking to the general, you're on your own.
And he asks for prayer for himself. I love that.
It's so humble, isn't it? He's the great apostle, and he says, I need backup. He's in chains, he's facing trial, and he asks them to pray that he would be bold. He knows he can't do it alone.
It just shows this is a team sport. It's not a solo mission. Which brings us right to the end, the sign-off. Verses 21 through 24.
The final goodbyes.
So that you also may know how I am and what I am doing, Tychicus, the beloved brother and faithful minister in the Lord, will tell you everything. I have sent him to you for this very purpose, that you may know how we are, and that he may encourage your hearts. Peace be to the brothers, and love with faith from God the Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Grace be with all who love our Lord Jesus Christ with love incorruptible.
Take it.
He gets a nice little shout out. Who was he?
He's one of the unsung heroes of the New Testament. He's the courier. He's the guy who literally carried this letter from a prison in Rome all the way across the sea to Ephesus.
If he loses his bag, we don't have this book.
We don't have Ephesians. He's the faithful link.
And then those last words, peace, love, faith, grace.
It's a perfect ending. And I think it helps tie the whole chapter together. I mean, think about the journey we just went on. We started in the household.
With fathers and children, masters and slaves.
And we ended on a cosmic battlefield with flaming arrows and demons. Feels like a huge contrast.
Domestic life versus spiritual war.
But I think for Paul, they're the same thing. And that's the big aha moment. How do you actually fight the cosmic powers?
How?
You don't do it with spells or shouting at the sky. You fight them by living as this new humanity right where you are.
So treating your slave with dignity is spiritual warfare.
Yes. Not provoking your children is standing firm against the darkness. The way you fight evil is by living out these relationships of peace and love and mutual submission. That's how you dismantle the present darkness.
That completely grounds it. It's not just about some invisible war out there. It's about what happens at your dinner table on a Tuesday. So we've gone from subverting Roman power structures to putting on God's armor. It really is a survival guide.
It is. Paul is saying, look, you are surrounded by an empire that wants to own you and by spiritual forces that want to destroy you.
But you have a new identity.
And you stand firm, not because you're so strong, but because you are wearing the righteousness of God himself.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on this week. Paul tells slaves and masters they're equal before God. He tells these terrified former pagans that they have power over demons. It's all about identity. So if you stripped away your job, your social status, your bank account, all the cultural things you use for safety, what armor are you actually relying on to stand firm today? Are you wearing the breastplate of your own performance or the breastplate of God's righteousness?
That is the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Stay curious and keep diving deep.